Imagine for a second, just, try to put yourself there, the sheer suffocating darkness of being chained to a wooden bench.
Oh, man, yeah. Deep inside Roman warship.
Exactly. I mean, the air is just thick with sweat and sea salt. You are miles out in the Mediterranean, and you're pulling this massive splintering oar alongside hundreds of other men.
Men who have been completely stripped of everything, right? Their names, their families.
Their freedom. You're literally just known by a number.
Yeah.
And there's a man with a whip pacing the deck right above you, basically dictating the rhythm of your breathing.
It's just a terrifying reality.
It really is. And that visceral, just gritty reality isn't just a scene from some Hollywood movie. It's actually the burning emotional core of a story that completely captivated the entire 19th century world.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, before Marvel movies, before we had these massive global franchises, there was a book so universally read that it was endorsed by the Pope.
Which is crazy.
Right, and championed by Ulysses S. Grant. It sold more copies than Uncle Tom's Cabin.
It was an absolute cultural phenomenon.
It really was. We are talking about Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ, which was published back in 1880 by Lew Wallace.
Yeah, and what makes its dominance so fascinating, at least to me, is that Wallace didn't just write this thrilling adventure about a galley slave getting revenge.
No, not at all. He wrote this profoundly meticulous exploration of faith, the ancient world, and the true nature of the Messiah.
Which is exactly what we are focusing on for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Because we are picking up this novel, but we're looking at it specifically through a conservative evangelical lens.
Right. So the goal here isn't just, a standard literary review.
No, exactly. It's to unpack how this incredible piece of historical fiction can actually serve as a tool to deepen your faith. We really want to see how it can help you understand the Bible more profoundly.
And hopefully inspire you to live out your love for Christ in your day-to-day life.
Yeah. And that approach, honestly, it aligns perfectly with how the author himself came to the material.
It does. Lew Wallace actually started out as well, kind of a skeptic, honestly.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he wanted to investigate the historical origins of Christianity. And through his exhaustive research, he became entirely convinced of its truth.
Wow, so he basically researched himself into the faith.
Exactly. And he poured that newfound conviction straight into the novel. So the result is this portrait of Christ and the first century world that is just incredibly theologically robust and really reverent.
But to really grasp the spiritual weight of that portrait, we have to start by getting our boots on the ground in the ancient world.
Right. You have to understand the context.
Because reading this book is honestly like putting on a pair of historical VR goggles. It takes the dry black and white text of ancient history, like the dates, the lists of emperors, and it forces it to burst into color.
It really makes you feel the emotional weight of that era.
You feel the dust of the Jerusalem markets, you hear the clash of Roman armor, and you can just sense this absolute suffocating tension of living under military occupation.
Yeah, because we're stepping right into Judea during the reigns of Augustus and Tiberius.
And the physical and political reality of that setting is, it's essential to everything that happens next.
Oh, absolutely. You have to understand the overwhelming machinery of the Roman Empire here.
It's just everywhere.
Everywhere. This was a hegemony maintained through absolute unyielding military force and naval dominion. Rome held the ultimate judicial power.
Right. Roman prefects, guys like Valerius Gratus and later Pontius Pilate, they could just confiscate massive family estates on a total whim.
Yeah, and they could execute non-citizens via crucifixion just to make a public point.
Yeah.
They crushed dissent without a second thought.
And living underneath that boot, is the Jewish population holding desperately to their covenantal identity as God's chosen people. But they aren't exactly unified, are they?
Not at all. The pressure cooker of Roman occupation has completely fractured their society.
Yeah, you see that a lot in the Gospels, right? All these different groups clashing.
Exactly. And the novel does a brilliant job of showing exactly why they clashed. On one end, you have the Sadducees.
Right, the temple elite.
Wealthy aristocracy. Their survival strategy was essentially just cooperation. They worked with Rome to maintain the status quo and, hold on to their own power.
Which obviously didn't sit well with everyone else.
No, especially not the Pharisees. They looked at the occupation and believed the solution was absolute, strict adherence to the Torah.
Right, like if we just follow the rules perfectly, God will save us.
Precisely.
Yeah.
They believed if the nation could just achieve perfect ritual purity, God would intervene and rescue them.
And then, of course, you have the Zealots, who basically looked at both of those strategies and said, No, the only answer to Roman steel is our own steel.
Yeah, they wanted a full-on, violent military rebellion to overthrow the empire.
So it's just a total powder keg. I mean, political anxiety, religious expectations, simmering violence. Everyone is just waiting for a deliverer.
Everyone is waiting for the Messiah to show up and fix the immediate physical reality of Rome.
Right. And if the world is that tense, if Judea is this powder keg just waiting for a spark, you would totally expect a book called A Tale of the Christ to start right there in the streets of Jerusalem.
You really would.
But it doesn't, and this completely threw me off when I first looked at it. Before we ever meet a Roman soldier or a Jewish rebel, the story begins far out in the desert.
It does.
It begins with these three men completely disconnected from the political drama of Judea.
Yeah, and it's actually a masterful theological statement by Wallace. The narrative opens with the world's search for the Creator.
Right, the Magi meeting in the desert.
Exactly. Yeah. But Wallace doesn't just treat them as generic, nameless wise men. He gives each of them a distinct, deeply symbolic background that represents basically the absolute limits of human wisdom.
Let's look at those backgrounds because they are honestly fascinating. First, you have Gaspar. He's a Greek philosopher from Athens and Thessaly.
Yeah, so he essentially represents the absolute pinnacle of Western intellectual thought.
Right, he's read all the greats.
He has. Gaspar has studied the great philosophers. He has followed human reason as far as it can possibly go, and he arrives at the concept of the immortality of the soul and the existence of one perfectly just God.
But reason has a ceiling.
Exactly. It has a hard ceiling. He goes to Mount Olympus, the historic center of his culture's religion, seeking a direct revelation. But he finds absolutely nothing.
Wow.
Because human intellect alone simply cannot bridge that infinite gap between a finite man and an infinite God.
He hits this impassable wall. He says he just had to stand there and cry aloud for help. It's this profound intellectual despair.
Yeah.
And then you have Melchior, who comes from a completely different paradigm. He's a Hindu from India, born a Brahmin, which is the absolute highest caste.
Right. He is deeply steeped in the ancient Vedas.
Yeah.
But Melchior's journey is really about the limits of social and religious structures.
Okay, how so?
Well, he looks at his religion, which enforces this rigid caste system, dooming the lowest classes to perpetual misery. And it teaches that they might be reincarnated as insects or brutes.
Which is just devastating.
Right, and he realizes that a religion functioning like that is entirely devoid of divine love. For Melchior, the fundamental principle of life has to be love.
And love inherently demands action and sacrifice for others.
Exactly. But his culture violently rejects that idea. When he tries to preach this concept of divine love and actually show kindness to the outcasts, he is literally stoned and driven into exile in the Himalayas.
Oh, wow. So you have the failure of Western intellect with Gaspar, the failure of Eastern social religion with Melchior, and finally, you have Balthazar, the Egyptian priest.
Right, and Balthazar represents the failure of antiquity and tradition.
Because Egypt is so old.
Yes, he comes from a culture boasting the oldest recorded history on Earth. Yet, despite all their ancient wisdom, they had descended into worshiping animals and nature, just this sprawling pantheon of false, petty gods.
But he finds something else, doesn't he?
He does. Balthazar discovers an ancient, unrecorded secret of his people. He discovers the truth of the one God and a life that is active, joyous, and everlasting with him.
But his culture doesn't want to hear it either.
No, not at all. When he tries to preach this monotheistic truth in Alexandria, which was the cultural capital, he is mocked. He's pelted with epigrams and literally laughed right out of the city.
So you have these three brilliant, powerful men representing the great civilizations of the ancient world.
Right.
And they have all independently realized that their systems, like intellect, social structure, ancient tradition, they are all fundamentally incomplete.
Completely inadequate.
Yeah, so they are wandering in the desert, guided by the Spirit, seeking the Redeemer. But if we are looking at this from a biblical perspective, I have to ask, why start a book about the Jewish Messiah with a Greek, a Hindu, and an Egyptian having this theological summit in the desert?
That's a great question. And it's because it proves that Jesus is not merely a peripheral religious symbol or some localized national hero.
Okay.
Christ is the sovereign center of all human history. The arrival of the Magi demonstrates the universal scope of Christ's mission. The gospel was always meant to reach beyond Israel to all nations.
Right, so it's a global rescue mission from day one.
Exactly. This actually fulfills the ancient Abrahamic promise found all the way back in Genesis 12, where God tells Abraham that through his seed, All the families of the earth would be blessed.
That just makes the opening of the story so much bigger. It really makes you wonder about our own searches for meaning today.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, we might not be Greek philosophers or Egyptian priests, but we all look for purpose in similar places, don't we?
We absolutely do.
We look for it in getting another degree or climbing a social ladder or adhering to some traditional way of life. But this narrative suggests that all of those human efforts eventually hit a wall.
Right.
We can't think our way up to God. God actually has to come down to us.
And Balthazar articulates this beautifully in the text. He realizes that to restore true faith and to redeem the human race, the reformer must have a more than human sanction.
He has to be from outside the system.
Yes, he must demonstrate God. And to do that, God must make himself manifest in person. The incarnation isn't just this high-minded theological concept to be debated in a classroom. It is a divine rescue mission for a world that has completely exhausted its own answers.
Wow. So we have this cosmic, universal hope established at the Nativity. The stars are aligning, the angels are singing, these representatives of the nations are bowing down. It is peaceful and perfect.
It is.
But what happens when the starlight fades and the people of Judea still have to wake up to Roman boots on their necks?
Yeah, the world doesn't just instantly change overnight.
Exactly. And that brings us crashing face first into the gritty, awful reality of our main character, Judah Ben-Hur.
And the contrast here is intentionally jarring. Judah embodies the tragic reality of his people. He is a young Jewish prince living in Jerusalem, and his entire life is about to be shattered by the machinery of Roman injustice.
And the catalyst for all of this is his childhood friend, Messala, right? A Roman who has just returned from his education in Rome.
Yeah, and Messala comes back completely transformed. They used to be like brothers, but now Messala has adopted this deeply cynical, utilitarian worldview.
He tells Judah straight to his face that a Roman is inherently superior.
Right.
And that power, just raw, unyielding power, is the only currency that actually matters in the world.
Messala essentially represents the entire spirit of the empire, and he acts on it during this military parade through Jerusalem.
Right, the new Roman prefect, Valerius Gratus, is marching past Judah's house.
Exactly. Judah leans over his roof to watch the procession, and he accidentally dislodges a loose clay tile. It falls and strikes the prefect, completely knocking him off his horse.
It is a complete accident, just a freak occurrence.
Total accident.
But Messala, who is right there and knows it was an accident, he sees a golden opportunity. He wants a political advancement, and he wants to confiscate the massive Hur family fortune.
Yeah, so he falsely accuses Judah of attempted assassination. And this is where the absolute terror of the Roman system is fully displayed.
Because there's no due process, is there?
None. Judah is condemned without a trial. There is no defense, no cross-examination. It is a severe, blatant violation of justice. He is sentenced to the galleys.
And it gets worse for his family?
Much worse. His mother, Miriam, and his sister, Tirzah, are thrown into a subterranean dungeon in the Tower of Antonia, which is this notorious Roman fortress. The entire estate is seized.
In an instant, Judah is stripped of his identity, his family, and his humanity.
He goes from being a prince to a nameless galley slave.
Yeah.
Number 60.
And he spends years chained to that oar, surviving on nothing but sheer willpower and this burning, all-consuming desire for revenge against Messala.
Yeah, that hatred is what keeps him alive.
But eventually, through this massive sea battle, he manages to save the life of a Roman tribune named Arius.
Good.
And Arius adopts him. He gives Judah Roman status, freedom, and eventually this immense wealth.
It's a complete miracle.
But what does Judah do with this miracle? He uses it to secretly build an army. He starts recruiting and training Galilean legions to fight for the Messiah.
And this is a critical juncture for conservative evangelical readers to analyze, because Judah's actions here represent the ultimate trap of the political Messiah.
Right, because of what the expectations were at the time.
Exactly. In first-century Judea, the prevalent expectation, which was taught by many rabbis and desperately hoped for by the zealots, was that the son of David would be a literal military king.
They wanted a warrior.
They believed the Messiah would arise, draw a sword, violently overthrow the Gentile occupiers, and reestablish Jewish political sovereignty.
And honestly, given everything Judah has suffered, you can completely understand why he buys into that.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, he wants a conqueror who will crush Rome and validate his own personal suffering.
It is deeply understandable from a purely human perspective.
Yeah.
But it is a complete misreading of what the scriptures actually promised.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Wallace bases his theological critique here on a deep exegesis of Old Testament prophecy. The narrative highlights the passages that Judah and his contemporaries deliberately overlooked or misinterpreted.
Like what were they missing?
The primary blind spot is Isaiah 53, the prophecy of the suffering servant.
Right, the classic messianic text.
Exactly. In the original Hebrew, the Ebed YHWH, the servant of the Lord, is described as someone who accomplishes the redemption of his people not through military conquest, but through substitutionary suffering.
The text says he is led like a lamb to the slaughter, right?
Bearing the transgressions of his people, he is crushed for our iniquities.
That is the exact opposite of a warrior on a stallion with a sword.
Completely the opposite.
And it's not just Isaiah, is it? There's that incredible imagery in Zechariah, too.
Yes, Zechariah 9, the prophet declares, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Behold, thy king cometh unto thee. He is just and having salvation, lowly and riding upon an ass."
Riding a donkey, not a war horse.
Exactly. And the very next verse explicitly states that this king will cut off the chariot and the horse of battle, and he will speak peace shalom to the nations.
It's like hiring a contractor because you have a leaky roof and you just want a quick patch job, right?
Yeah, perfect analogy.
But the contractor shows up, takes one look, and starts tearing up the entire foundation of your house. Judah wants God to fix his temporary political problem, the Roman occupation, and his ruined life.
Right.
But God is addressing the eternal foundation of human sin. Judah is organizing legions and stockpiling weapons, while the true king is preparing to discard worldly weapons entirely.
Judah has taken the vast, eternal prophecies of a glorious kingdom and reduced them down to a nationalist political agenda. He is basically trying to make the Messiah serve his own personal desire for vindication.
It makes you wonder how often we do the exact same thing today.
Oh, all the time.
Obviously, we aren't training hidden Galilean legions, but how often do we pray for a political Messiah or a quick fix to our earthly problems?
Yeah, we ask God to crush our enemies, to fix our finances, to ensure our preferred political party wins.
Completely missing that Christ's primary mission is to inaugurate a spiritual kingdom of souls. We want a God who serves our agenda rather than submitting ourselves to his eternal purposes.
That is an enduring insight for modern evangelicals. I mean, Christ certainly is king, and Christianity speaks to justice and public morality.
Right.
But Christ's primary mission in his first coming was not to establish an earthly empire through force. It was to give himself as the atoning sacrifice for sinners. If we miss the suffering servant, we miss the entire gospel.
And because Judah misses that, because he fundamentally misunderstands what the Messiah has come to do, his own moral journey becomes incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, he's on a really dark path here.
He genuinely believes his quest for vengeance against Messala is righteous. He thinks he's doing God's work by preparing to slaughter Romans. And this delusion sets the stage for the most famous sequence in the entire story: the chariot race.
The chariot race in the Circus of Antioch is just a masterpiece of dramatic writing. Wallace actually modeled it on the funeral games for Patroclus in Homer's Iliad.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it operates as this massive physical clash between two worldviews: Rome's ruthless, arrogant pride, embodied by Messala, and Jewish endurance under divine providence, embodied by Judah.
And the sensory details of this scene are just overwhelming.
Oh, they put you right in the arena.
Oh, you have the roar of thousands of spectators, the blinding dust, the cracking of whips. Judah is driving these magnificent, perfectly synchronized Arab horses belonging to Sheikh Uldurim.
Well, Messala is driving this heavy Roman team, and he is willing to use every dirty trick in the book to win.
It is brutal. And in the climax, Judah wins. But he doesn't just beat Messala, he physically destroys him.
Yeah, Messala's chariot is wrecked in this horrific crash. His body is permanently crippled.
And because of the massive wagers placed on the race, he loses his entire fortune, too.
Exactly. Judah reclaims his wealth, his honor, and completely ruins his enemy. It is the ultimate revenge fantasy, perfectly executed.
But this is where Wallace employs some profound literary irony. As a reader, you expect this to be the triumphant, joyous climax of the story.
Right, the bad guy got what was coming to him.
Judah has won. The villain is defeated. But as Judah stands there in the aftermath, the victory leaves his heart entirely empty.
The revenge doesn't satisfy his soul at all.
And far worse, despite all his reclaimed wealth and his newfound status, he discovers that his mother and sister are still locked in that Roman dungeon. And they have contracted leprosy.
We really need to pause on the leprosy here, because in this novel, and obviously in the Bible, it is so much more than just a medical diagnosis.
Right, it functions as this powerful, terrifying metaphor.
It does. Under the Old Covenant Levitical law, Leprosy was a physical manifestation of human corruptibility and helplessness. It wasn't just a disease, it rendered a person ceremonially unclean.
Meaning they couldn't participate in society.
Right. Lepers were literally excluded from the camp, from the community, and from temple worship. They were treated as the living dead, forced to tear their clothes, cover their faces, and cry unclean to warn others away.
It really represents the isolating, incurable corruption of sin. It is a decay that no amount of human strength, no amount of wealth, and no political power can cleanse. Judah can crush Messala in the arena. He can win all the gold in Antioch, but he cannot heal his family's leprosy, and he cannot heal the bitterness rotting his own soul.
And this realization forces the novel to transition from a conventional revenge plot into a profound spiritual crisis.
No.
From an evangelical perspective, Judah's deepest problem isn't that he suffered injustice.
No.
It is that he looks to personal vengeance to restore his soul. He operates entirely on the principle of lex talionis, the Old Testament law of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
Wait, hold on, though. If
Yeah.
we are looking at this biblically, if someone falsely imprisons my family, ruins my life, and leaves my mother and sister to rot in a dungeon, I'm going to want them to pay.
Right. It's human nature.
But honestly, doesn't the Bible kind of back that up? Isn't an eye for an eye literally established by God in the Old Testament to ensure justice? Why is Judah's desire for payback suddenly framed as a moral poison?
That is a crucial distinction to make, and I'm glad you brought it up. The lex talionis was given by God to civil magistrates, to the judges of Israel, to ensure that punishment mathematically fit the crime.
So it was about proportional justice.
Exactly. Its purpose was to prevent escalating generational blood feuds. It was a rule for the courts to maintain civil order, not a license for individuals to pursue personal vendettas.
Ah, I see.
The novel highlights the radical ethical shift inaugurated by Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. Christ redirects Judah away from the question, how can my enemy be defeated, to the much deeper, more painful question, what kind of man am I becoming?
So Jesus is introducing the kingdom ethic of grace.
Yes, the Greek word charis. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus completely overturns earthly assumptions about strength and power.
He flips it upside down.
He teaches that mercy, humility, enemy love, and radical trust in God are not signs of weakness, but the very pattern of life under God's reign. Now, true forgiveness is not pretending that the evil didn't happen. It doesn't erase the need for civil justice or magistrates. But the personal renunciation of vengeance is an act of deep faith in God's ultimate justice. As the Apostle Paul writes in Romans 12:19, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord."
It's like realizing that seeking personal vengeance is like trying to put out a fire in your living room by throwing your own furniture into it.
That's a great way to put it.
You might manage to burn the intruder, but you are still destroying your own home in the process. Forgiveness is actually an act of surrender. You are handing the judge's gavel back to God and stepping down from the bench.
Yes, the story is telling us that a man's own hatred can enslave him just as brutally as Roman chains.
Wallace uses the dialogue between Judah and the Egyptian Balthazar to illustrate this beautifully, doesn't he?
He does. Balthazar represents pure spiritual messianic expectation. He constantly challenges Judah to elevate his perspective. He tells him that the true kingdom is a kingdom of souls, and that the greatest possible victory for a man is the conquest of himself, not his political enemies.
Which is such a challenging concept for us today. It forces you to look at your own life.
Oh, absolutely.
Are you harboring grievances? Are you taking your own bitterness and baptizing it in the name of justice? We all have people who have wronged us. But this story demands we confront the reality that holding on to vengeance destroys us.
It rots you from the inside out.
Letting it go, surrendering it to God's perfect justice, is the necessary precursor to true spiritual freedom.
And that freedom is exactly what Judah is hurtling toward. His realization that his revenge is empty, that his human strength cannot save his mother and sister, and that his hidden Galilean legions are totally useless for the kind of healing his family actually needs. All of that leads him directly to the true climax of this story.
Which isn't the chariot race.
No, it's not. The true climax is the crucifixion at Golgotha.
We really have to unpack this sequence carefully because this is where all the theological threads of the book pull tight. Judah is actively tracking the public ministry of Jesus at this point.
Right. He's watching him closely.
He has witnessed the miracles. He is actually there when Jesus miraculously heals his mother and sister of their leprosy.
Which is a huge moment. That moment alone proves that divine holiness doesn't run away from human brokenness. It actively cleanses it, reversing that old covenant exclusion.
Exactly. But despite seeing this incredible healing, Judah is still clinging to his military hopes. He is standing by in Jerusalem with his hidden legions, just waiting for Jesus to give the signal to draw swords and attack Rome.
Right. And before we reach the cross, we need to trace how Judah's understanding of Jesus is challenged, starting back at the Jordan River.
Okay, let's go there.
Judah and Balthazar are there, and they hear John the Baptist make his radical public declaration. John points at Jesus and cries out, "Behold the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sin of the world."
Which, for a Jewish prince who has been plotting a military uprising, has to sound completely absurd.
Totally ridiculous.
He wants the Lion of Judah. A lamb is prey. A lamb is what you slaughter on the altar.
Exactly. The Greek phrase used in the Gospel of John is amnos to theo. For anyone steeped in the Torah, the image of the lamb immediately evokes the Passover sacrifice and the daily temple offerings.
It speaks entirely exclusively of substitutionary atonement.
Yes, John is not announcing a military conqueror who will shed the blood of Romans. He is announcing the ultimate sacrifice who will shed his own blood for sinners.
It's the fulfillment of Isaiah 53. But Judah still doesn't fully accept it until he follows the procession up the Via Dolorosa to Calvary.
Yeah, that scene is just gut-wrenching.
You can feel the tension in the text, the noise of the mob, the brutality of the Roman soldiers. Judah sees Jesus, the man who once gave him a cup of water when he was a dying galley slave, now beaten and carrying a cross.
And Judah still has his hand on his sword.
He does. His army is ready. He actually asks Jesus, "If I bring rescue, wilt thou accept it?"
And Jesus gives no signal. He remains silent and willingly submits to the cross. This completely shatters Judah's paradigm.
I just can't comprehend it.
The novel is dramatizing the theology of John 18 here, where Jesus tells Pilate, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight."
Worldly kingdoms rely on physical force, coercion, and violence. Christ's reign operates through sacrificial truth and love.
So Judah is forced to stand at the foot of the cross, just watching his political expectations die. And the narrative delves deeply into the passion, specifically analyzing Christ's final words from the cross.
Which the sources highlight beautifully. There are two vital cries that Judah witnesses here.
Right. The first is the cry of dereliction, drawn from Psalm 22 and Matthew 27. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani."
And it is crucial to understand that this is not a moment of lost faith or mere physical agony, right?
No, not at all. It is the terrifying spiritual experience of substitution. Jesus, who had known perfect, unbroken communion with the Father from eternity past, is bearing the full weight and penalty of human sin, which is absolute separation from God.
He is enduring the spiritual reality of hell so that humanity wouldn't have to.
It shows both the absolute severity of our sin and the incomprehensible depth of God's love.
And then just before the end comes the second cry, "It is finished."
In Greek, that word is tetelestai. And this changes everything for Judah. In the ancient world, tetelestai was not a cry of defeat or exhaustion.
It wasn't like, "I'm done, I give up."
Exactly. It was an accounting term used in commerce to mean a debt had been paid in full. It was used in religious context to mean a sacrifice was perfectly complete.
Jesus is declaring a cosmic victory. The debt of human sin is paid in full. The work of redemption is accomplished.
But here, we need to insert a really important evangelical clarification based on the sources.
Oh, right, because of the era the book was written in.
Yeah, the novel was written in the 19th century, and sometimes the literary phrasing groups faith, love, and good works together as if they are three equal partners working together to secure salvation.
Like they all weigh the same on the scale.
Exactly. There's even a moment where Balthazar hears a voice in a dream saying, "Thy good works have conquered."
Which sounds a bit off from a strict theological standpoint.
Right, and while the novel's overall theology is remarkably orthodox, conservative evangelical theology insists on the proper biblical order of those elements, drawing heavily from passages like Ephesians 2.89.
Right. We are saved by grace through faith.
Yes. Sinners are justified by grace alone, through faith in Christ alone. Our good works do not earn our acceptance before God. Rather, they are the necessary fruit and the visible evidence of a saving faith that has already been granted by grace.
So the equation isn't faith plus works equals salvation. It's faith equals salvation plus works. We don't work for our salvation, we work from it.
That is the perfect way to phrase it.
And that distinction is vital because it aligns perfectly with the realization Judah actually has at the cross. He realizes that all his works, his secret army, his massive wealth, his elaborate plotting, They are utterly useless for achieving the redemption his soul actually needs.
When Judah hears Tetelestai, the scales finally fall from his eyes. He understands what Balthasar was trying to teach him about a spiritual kingdom.
He gets it.
He realizes that the cross is not a tragedy that interrupted the Messiah's mission. The cross was the mission. The king conquers not by shedding the blood of his enemies, but by offering his own blood for their redemption.
It makes you think about the things we rely on today. I mean, we might not have a secret army of Galileans, but we all have swords we refuse to drop, don't we?
We really do.
We have things we rely on to validate ourselves, our careers, our bank accounts, our own morality, our self-righteousness. But the cross demands that we abandon our reliance on our own strength. We have to stop trying to earn our way to God and rest entirely in the finished work of Christ.
And that realization is the turning point of redemptive history. And it is the absolute turning point of Judah's life.
Yes.
Once he grasps the reality of grace, that the debt is fully paid, his entire worldview shifts. And this brings us to the final movement of the story, which answers a crucial question.
Which is, what does a life transformed by that kind of grace actually look like in practice?
Exactly. Because understanding that it is finished regarding your salvation doesn't mean you just sit back and do nothing.
Right, you don't just kick your feet up.
For Judah, his faith immediately transforms into radical action and stewardship.
And to understand this transformation, we have to look at the character of Simonides, right?
Yes, Simonides was the loyal steward of the Hur estate.
And his story is just incredible. While Judah was enslaved in the galleys, Simonides was discovered by the Romans, tortured, and permanently crippled.
But despite his immense suffering, he secretly preserved and vastly multiplied the Hur family fortune through trade and commerce over the years.
Simonides is this incredible picture of faithfulness in the dark. He tells Judah, intelligence is never wasted. Intelligence like God's never stirs except with design.
Right. He held on to the question of why God allowed such horrific suffering, just watching and waiting for an answer to reveal itself.
This introduces the profound theme of providence in the story.
It does. The novel suggests that these seemingly random, horrific tragedies like the falling roof tile, the galley slavery, the leprosy, the torture of Simonides, they were not meaningless accidents.
They felt like it at the time, though.
Of course. But they were orchestrated or permitted by God to refine their character, strip away their reliance on worldly power, and position them for a much greater kingdom purpose. The suffering was preparation.
It connects so perfectly to the story of Joseph in Genesis. What man meant for evil, God meant for good.
Beautiful parallel, yes.
So Judah recovers this immense multiplied fortune from Simonides. Now, before the crucifixion, the plan was to use this wealth to fund the Galilean army and overthrow Rome in a bloodbath. But after the cross, after understanding that the kingdom is spiritual, what does Judah actually do with all that money?
He fundamentally reallocates it for eternity. The novel's epilogue reveals that Judah does not buy a Roman villa. He does not fund a political rebellion.
Okay, so what does he do?
He uses his vast wealth to fund the early Christian church. Specifically, he travels to Rome, the very heart of the empire that oppressed him, and finances the construction of the catacombs of San Calixto.
Wow.
This was the massive underground network of tunnels and tombs where the heavily persecuted early Christians could safely hide, worship, and bury their dead.
It's an incredible paradigm shift. I mean, Judah takes the very wealth that Rome tried to steal from him, and he uses it to build an underground city that will literally outlast the Roman Empire itself.
It really is the ultimate picture of biblical stewardship.
It's realizing that your life, your talents, your bank account, your influence, your platform isn't your personal playground. It's a trust fund that you are managing for the kingdom of God.
And the early church fathers actually wrote extensively about this exact dynamic. Men like Justin Martyr and Tertullian had to constantly explain to Roman authorities that Christians were not a political threat trying to overthrow Caesar with swords.
Because that's what Rome was afraid of.
Exactly. Tertullian famously declared that Christians win victories not through rebellion, but through endurance, prayer, and love.
Which is so completely countercultural.
And writers like John Chrysostom taught that earthly riches were meant to be transformed into heavenly treasure through charity and supporting the persecuted body of Christ. Judah's actions perfectly embody this early patristic theology of wealth. He completely abandons violence for endurance.
He stops trying to build a temporary earthly kingdom and starts investing in the eternal one. And it invites us to ask ourselves the same hard question, doesn't it?
It really does. How are we using our resources?
Right. Are we pouring our time, our money, and our energy into the fleeting empires of this world seeking status, comfort, or political power? Or are we investing in the eternal kingdom of God?
It challenges every reader to examine their own motives regarding political engagement, church participation, and personal wealth. Are we trying to make Christ serve our personal agendas, or have we submitted our resources entirely to his?
Man, we have covered a massive amount of ground today.
We really have.
We've journeyed from the philosophical despair of the Magi in the desert, through the suffocating galleys of Roman oppression, into the false hope of violent rebellion, up the agonizing, world-altering path to Calvary, and finally down into the faithful, quiet stewardship of the catacombs.
And at its core, Ben-Hur is just a sweeping, powerful illustration of the overarching redemptive story spanning creation, fall, redemption, and consummation.
Yeah.
It shows how the expectation of a political messiah had to give way to the reality of a suffering servant. It demonstrates that worldly power and physical strength cannot deliver the human soul from the rot of sin.
And that vengeance is a poison that is only cured by the grace of forgiveness.
Yes. It firmly affirms the historic reality of the incarnation, the substitutionary death, and the absolute deity of Jesus Christ.
But, as the sources emphasize, and as we always want to remind you, we do need to exercise spiritual discernment here.
Absolutely.
This is a magnificent, deeply moving book, but it is imaginative historical fiction. It is not scripture.
Exactly. A conservative evangelical reader must always test the novel's theology against the Bible itself. We must distinguish between the biblical events the novel dramatizes and the author's artistic inventions.
Right.
And crucially, we must firmly reject any anti-Jewish readings that might arise from historical misinterpretations of the text.
Which unfortunately has happened over the centuries.
It has, but the New Testament clearly locates the guilt for Christ's death broadly on all sinful humanity. We must remember that Jesus, his apostles, and the entire earliest church were themselves Jewish. The cross is not an indictment of a single people. It is the righteous judgment on all human sin and the sole source of salvation for all who believe.
That is a vital clarification to end on. The story is a mirror reflecting our own desperate need for grace, regardless of our background, our culture, or our era.
Ultimately, the novel serves as a compelling witness to the truth that human strength, intellect, and political triumph simply cannot save us.
Only the crucified and risen Christ can.
Exactly. He alone can free a person from sin's deepest bondage and forge a heart capable of justice joined to mercy.
Think back to the beginning of our deep dive when we talked about this book being like historical VR goggles. It makes the dust and the blood of the ancient world incredibly vivid.
It really does.
But the true power of the story isn't just in helping us see the first century more clearly. It's in helping us see our own world more clearly.
That's a great point.
It's like a spiritual X-ray that strips away all our modern political obsessions, our secret desires for vengeance, and our relentless reliance on wealth, revealing the ultimate spiritual reality beneath it all.
It strips away the temporal to reveal the eternal.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over long after you finish listening today. You've heard how Judah Ben-Hur took all his worldly wealth, his reclaimed status, and even his deep personal pain, and he used it to build an underground city of the dead, the catacombs, to protect the living, breathing faith of the early church. In our modern world, where we are so constantly obsessed with comfort, platform, and visibility, what underground foundations are you quietly building in your own life that will outlast the empires of today?